Coral reefs are animals that provide habitats and food for a diverse group of organisms. They are important to the ocean ecosystem and to us as well, bringing tourism, recreational activities, and medicine. However, they are currently in peril, as coral bleaching is affecting them on a large scale. This bleaching is caused by ocean acidification, which is a serious global issue, as it affects all life on Earth. Although we may not be able to undo the effects, we can certainly prevent it from getting worse. Many people don't understand what coral reefs are and all that they provide for us.
So there's sort of two main kinds of coral reefs, soft coral reefs and hard coral reefs. You probably know the difference. The hard coral reefs have a sort of calcium carbonate skeleton. The soft ones are mostly fleshy organisms that exist.
Coral reefs are one of the most diverse systems in the ocean. They are located in shallow tropical areas such as Hawaii, Indonesia, and Australia. Coral reefs cover 1% of the seafloor and supports 25% of ocean life, such as spiny lobster, angelfish, boxfish, triggerfish, and even sharks. However, the surface area of coral reefs are decreasing more and more each year, meaning there is less habitat for those organisms to live in. One of the most important relationships a coral can have is with algae. Their symbiotic relationship is the basis for all life in the coral reefs. This specific type of algae is a phytoplankton that performs photosynthesis and shares nutrients with the coral. It provides oxygen, which is why so many organisms can live there. The algae also gives the coral its vibrant color. In return, the corals provide shelter and protection for the algae. The oceans absorb 80% of the CO2 put into the atmosphere. However, when they accumulate too much carbon dioxide, it reacts with the hydrogen ions and lowers the pH of the ocean, thus making them more acidic. This poses a problem since many organisms, including the algae and coral, cannot adapt fast enough to the rising acidity levels. The failure to adapt and the additional stress caused by the acidification then leads to coral bleaching.
Chemicals and excess light can cause the chlorophyll to degrade, and when that happens, or if pollution causes the algae to die, they either die and decompose or they leave the hard structure, and then the color disappears because the color is due to the pigments in the algae, and the leftover calcium carbonate is just a whitish color, and that's why it's called coral bleaching.
The oil sands in Alberta are one of the most destructive projects in our world, taking up 140,200 square kilometers of land in northern Alberta. It also is the largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions growth in Canada, with the industry producing 40 million tons of CO2 emissions per year.
A large part of Canada's economy, especially here, in particular here in Alberta, is based on resource extraction, in particular oil extraction, and that's an industry that produces a lot of carbon dioxide, especially the sort of oil that you're extracting from the tar sands is a much more carbon dioxide sort of production intensive process than, say, like pumping liquid oil out of the.
As of 2010, Canada is one of the leading countries when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions per capita, producing 20 tons of CO2 per person. Canada's total greenhouse gas emissions have increased by 17% since 1990. This means although the oil sands are a major contributor to CO2 emissions, individuals like us are a large part of this problem.
What would happen to Canada or any other countries if the coral reefs died off?
So there certainly are lots of recreational opportunities. If you look in scuba diving magazines, 70, 80, 90% of the pictures you see in there are people going to tropical climates where the water's warm, diving around coral reefs because there's so much color, there's so much fish life, there's all sorts of biodiversity associated with coral reefs. So we lose those recreational opportunities. Any fisheries that are associated with coral reefs, we would lose those. And so we lose that source of protein globally, which is really important. And there may be all sorts of things that we lose that we're not even aware of. So when I was at UBC, there was a person who worked in the oceanography department that looked at invertebrates associated with the intertidal zone. They're called nudibranchs, or the common name is sea slugs. And they're really colorful things. They're about this long, and you might not think, other than the color, that they're very interesting. But what he was interested in, he was a chemical oceanographer. He extracted what are called secondary metabolites from them. So compounds they produce, and it turns out that some of the compounds are used to treat cancer. So there could be all sorts of organisms living in coral reefs that we know very little about because we don't understand the biodiversity all that well, especially for small things. We understand the big things because they're easy to see, they're easy to count. But the really small things, we don't know very well. We only know probably, 10 to 15% of the biodiversity on the planet in general. There could be all sorts of medicinal products that are produced there that we don't even know about yet. We're losing those as we lose every hectare of tropical rainforest or coral reef without even knowing about it. Because ocean acidification is derived from CO2 inputs, we have to reduce CO2 inputs. But I think we could move a lot faster on that if we thought more about alternative forms of energy, and by driving more efficient vehicles, using more wind and solar power, and being less reliant on fossil fuels for our energy. But I'm sorry to say Canada is not a leader really in this respect, unfortunately. And partly it's because the price of gasoline is so inexpensive that most people make decisions based on what costs are. They think about the environment, but at the end of the day, if it's going to cost money to switch over to something that is more environmentally friendly, many people won't do it. So our governments need to provide incentives and think a little bit beyond just the local economy, start thinking about the national economy and the global economy.
The only way we can make a difference to save the coral reefs is to get political action, internationally and locally, that lowering CO2 emissions will give a chance for the corals to have their algae return and to recover. But in order to do that, we must create policies and agreements and enforce them efficiently. Reducing our personal carbon footprint is a step in the right direction, but at the rate we are going, it is not enough. Letting our opinion be known to the political leaders in our world will show them our concern. Having enough people voicing what they will want will be the only way we can ever get anything important done. What we can do locally is let the municipal government know that coral bleaching and ocean acidification is a global issue, and what we need to do is find a solution and fast.
Well, I say I care because I just think the world's a more interesting place if there are more and a more diverse range of species in it. We're blessed to live in a world that's biologically interesting.